Hey guys, welcome to the recap of the Real Housewives of Potomac Reunion Part 2. I would have named this episode calling Candiace taking control of the situation, taking control of the conversation, spearheading important conversations. I feel like Candiace was a great addition to the Real Housewives of Potomac. And I cannot imagine this season without her, as she has been a leader and a voice for these girls in correcting the situation. So where we last left off in the episode for the reunion, Wendy and Giselle are going back and forth pretty much about the situation with Giselle meddling in these girls' family lives and their relationships. And pretty much, Wendy, she addressed Giselle saying that there's a pattern of her going around and saying untruths about people's husbands. And it's always said by her, oh, it's out of concern, when it's just happens to be so convenient to be done when they're filming. And, we get Candiace going at it over Giselle, telling her that, it's so convenient that, you have nothing else to talk about, but it's finally come to a point for her to use her uterus to become a conversation piece for the franchise. And it's unfortunate. But I do see that as a pattern for Giselle. I do see her, going at these girls, getting involved into their lives, but kind of keeping it reserved when it comes to her life and what's going on with her situation. Because everyone is tired of Giselle being the producer and trying to control the situation and kind of shift, the views onto the other women, and that can be quite tiring, especially if you're one of the women who is sharing deep and personal stuff and you have a castmate who's getting paid to do less of the work, less of the burden to share their lives. And so we talk about, again, Chris. And Chris is not here yet to talk about it. We actually won't get to hear him talk about his side of things until we see part 3, which is the following episode. So Candiace pretty much calls Giselle to say, what did Chris do to you? Like, why is this a situation? And Giselle pretty much, she says that, Chris made her feel uncomfortable, but she can't really specify so much to exactly why she felt uncomfortable, just only that her being alone with him in the room made her uncomfortable, so that's why this was a situation in the first place. And it's unfortunate because it's making it seem that, Chris, what did Chris do? Like, we want to know, what did Chris do? What did he say for her to have that feeling? Like, I could have sworn we saw some footage where actually Giselle said, come talk to me in my room, or let's talk about this in a different location. But I didn't take it as, her trying to be alone and have some inappropriate conversation with Chris, or I didn't even see Chris making it inappropriate. He was drinking in that reunion, but I don't know. We can't speak and say to Giselle what her feelings are. If she did feel uncomfortable, she's allowed to feel uncomfortable, but don't make it seem like there was much more or an illusion of much more, because she was trying to say, oh, this and that, and we're talking about semantics, but what we want to do is be very, 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 very clear. We don't want to make Chris seem like he's a predator, and we don't want the husbands to feel uncomfortable to talk to another housewife with repercussions as a fear of looming over their head. So we see the footage of Chris flirting with Deborah, and after seeing the footage, Ashley, she said that she knows her friend not to be a liar, so that's why she took her friend's side. But seeing the footage, she does see how it doesn't match. And in talking to her friend said, well, it was probably the editing. She blamed it on the editing. So I'm like, come on. You can see based on the demeanor that Chris was talking, he was not trying to flirt with these women. He was simply doing small talk. And then we talk about Happy Eddie and how that was such a reach. I'm like, this is not a way to start this episode. Like, we're just making reaches here and there. we're addressing the situation because we should believe all women when they come forward. But with after everything that has happened, it's sad to see that none of the girls take accountability to see how, this was a reach. And we don't need to call it a reach. Like, come on, Happy Eddie. Like, no way you took Eddie being happy as being overly flirtatious or making the girls feel uncomfortable. Wendy had to speak up and say that the men can't communicate with the women in this group without fear of being perceived as a predator. And I thought that was a great point because it's true. Like, we're trying to say that men cannot be respectful or show any kind of decency without being perceived as, oh, maybe there's something more to that situation. And I hate to see that because in life after Me Too, it's kind of a fine line in how we interact amongst the different sexes. And what are we to do? Like, how are men supposed to move forward? How women are supposed to conduct themselves? What do we do as society? Because we don't want to cry wolf, and then when something actually happens, we don't believe the woman. We want to believe all women, but we can't deal with stuff that are so frivolous. Like, I understand if you can feel uncomfortable, but don't make it a thing where you wait till the cameras to talk about it to then address it, and it becomes a bigger situation. At that moment, I think Giselle should have addressed Candiace and told her how she was feeling, and Candiace would probably take it more seriously because this is not Giselle using this as a moment, as a storyline, as we all like to say. Rather as something that she finds very serious to address with Candiace. So that's an unfortunate situation. Candiace, we get into talking about Candiace live that she did, talking about the group, and Robin pretty much used this to show how Candiace was talking poorly about the group and how she didn't really like the group that she was in, and she wasn't real. And Candiace, she stands by with what she said because she felt like she was speaking her truth and she was not embarrassed with what she said. And if anything, that Robin should be the one that's embarrassed. Pretty much Candiace let Robin know that she wasn't talking about her, and that if she did thought that she was talking about her, that she could have pulled her to the side. Instead, Robin waited to be in a dinner with a group of women, dropping this information as if it was something bad that Candiace had done wrong. And, Robin makes an interesting hypocritical point. She's like, you always have an issue when we address it to you within the group, but, we're filming, so we have to be real and show our lives. And I'm like, Robin, you can't say that. Like, we know you. After seeing what has been done, like, Robin is so fake. Like, it's so clear that Robin can, do harm to the other girls, but she doesn't want no harm on her. Like, the excuse of saying, oh, but we're filming this show, so we should show our lives. But you yourself is not showing your lives. Giselle's not showing her life. And she was using this to have weight against Candiace, saying that you can't be upset that we pulled this up during filming because that's what we're here to do. So it's so interesting that we get the flashback to now Robin sitting with an interview with Andy, having to discuss these things. Because it's like, it's really showing the viewers and the audience who's a real hypocrite. Because remember, Robin was the one who was saying that I can't wait till everyone sees the real you. And it seems like Karen did a reverse Uno and made that happen for Robin. Because we're now learning Robin is fake pretty much. She's not real. And, the girls talk about their loyalty with each other, their friendships. And Candiace, for some reason, Candiace thinks Robin is her friend. And if anything, one of the most loyal friend to her in that group. And I'm like, no, Candiace, it's Wendy. Even though you don't know Wendy for as long as you did with Robin, Wendy has demonstrated that she will have your back, rightfully so, and will tell you when you're wrong, tell you when you're right. But Robin, it's whatever she sees that fits with her. Like, if she will blindly support you, but then if it doesn't suit her, she won't support you. So it's just so interesting how Candiace views her friendship with the girls, because Candiace, she is so smart. I'm like, girl, you don't see that that girl is not your friend? Like, come on. Like, Candiace has this issue. She keeps trying to have a friendship with Ashley when Ashley keeps showing her her colors. So it's like, Candiace, what's it gonna take? These girls, no, these girls don't have it. They have no interest in, being a friend to you. They have only interest in using you to further their storyline and their spot within the cast. So they have a lunch break and we move on to Giselle. Giselle, she had a lot going. Well, she had stuff going on in this season. She had the health scare. We talked about her podcast competing with Karen's live show, her health scare, her kids, and a little bit of her dating. Very, very, very small. And so when it came to Giselle, and pretty much we first talk about her home, she sees it not really as a forever home. She sees it as a home that she'll have until her kids are grown. And then hopefully she'll maybe move to someplace else, because that place, even though it's a home, I don't know, her sense of interior design or sense of design is not her thing. I'm like, no. We move into her podcast, and her podcast, Recently Shady with Robin, has done pretty well. They have millions and millions of listeners and views, and they pretty much talk about how it's interesting how Karen, all of a sudden, she wants to do the same thing. So we address Karen, like, Karen, are you taking these girls' ideas? Are you stealing people's ideas? First with Wendy, and then now with Robin and Giselle. And, Karen, she defends herself. She's like, no, she doesn't steal ideas. She was inspired by first Wendy Williams and then someone else, someone else. But essentially she said Wendy Williams at first. So she tries to make it clear that, she's inspired to do things and she does it on her own. So she doesn't steal ideas. She says her live shows have been quite successful. 300 people have shown up to see her live shows. They like to call themselves the Dames. And, Giselle and Robin, of course, they're making fun to say, like, if you really have people who come to see you and whatnot. That's neither here or there. Giselle then talks about her health scare, which she received a lot of encouraging feedback for. Like, that was the most encouraging feedback she has ever received since being on the franchise. And that is because that was the first time Giselle was real. So of course you're gonna receive overwhelming support. So it was nice for her to open up and share what she was going through, because it's so relatable. This is something that goes on in the Black community, where we have these issues of fibroids compromising our health. So it was nice that she decided to share that and, wasn't as reserved with having this information be out there. It was really vulnerable for her to reveal this to her kids on camera, because you don't know how the kids are going to act. Actually, we saw Giselle get super emotional about this, because when she went under surgery, her kids were receiving updates by the hour, and there was a point where they were not receiving any updates. And Giselle beforehand, she told the girls that she's not spending the night, that she will be home. Unfortunately for her, she had to spend the night, and the girls didn't receive any updates. And that's pretty drastic. I'm pretty sure the girls were just very concerned about their mother, if she's doing well or how she was doing, period. So that was a big sharing moment for Giselle. And I respect that, because that is no joke for sure. Andy then goes into talking about Giselle and how she doesn't share as much compared to the other girls. And he asked her, do you find that interesting that you hold these girls to a certain standard to share what's going on, but when it comes to you, you're quite reserved in divulging information? And, Giselle doesn't see that. Giselle feels like she's fair, in the sense that she will ask, but if they don't share, they don't share. But we know Giselle. Giselle is not a person that just backs down after, you tell her no, you're not sharing, she'll go ahead and, ask and ask and ask, and kind of puts you in a position where you want to be done with this conversation. So you end up divulging. Maybe you don't want to share, but you end up sharing. But when you do that to Giselle for some reason is able to dodge having to share what's going on with her life. And we talk a little bit about her dating. Andy asked about Steve, and she's not in a relationship right now with Steve. As you know, she's seeing a younger man, but she does still see Steve when he comes to town. So they talk about her younger boyfriend, Jason, who's 16 years younger. Maybe we'll see him in the next season if she gets to stay. I mean, I would love to see Giselle in a relationship and what kind of impact that would happen over her, Because I'm kind of tired of seeing Giselle, on this franchise, not showing any of her personal life. So it'll be good for her to show Jason next season. I hope she does too. And I hope they hold her accountable to it. As much as energy that Giselle gives them, the other girls should reciprocate that same energy. We then get into Wendy, and Wendy had a lot going on this season. Her starting a lounge with Peter, her health scare, her beef with Peter, and then her issues with Mia. So, first let's talk about her health scare. Her health scare, she had issues with her kidneys, so she had to change her diet, drink water, exercise, less stress. So that was a simple situation to address, and I hope Wendy takes that seriously, because Wendy, she takes on a lot. She's not only a professor, but she's also a wife, a mom, and she takes care of all her other businesses. But I don't know why she sees herself getting into a new business with Peter. I see that it's an opportunity that comes up, so you're kind of interested. But to get into the restaurant industry, it's so cutthroat. In the first year, you're lucky if you even break even. And what she did was so smart. She talked to Ashley, because Ashley was in the restaurant industry, and Candiace is also familiar with the restaurant industry through her husband. And so she talks to them, and they try to talk her out of it. But of course, Wendy, she's very eager to learn about an industry. So I can see herself still getting involved with it, but I do not think it's going to be with Peter. For some reason, this situation with Peter, which could have been great and a great opportunity for Peter to come back to the franchise, as I know he loves being a housewife. For some reason, this does not work. I guess it's because Peter has some involvement with Mia and her husband. So the situation now with working with Wendy has been compromised, because for some reason Mia wants to say that Wendy offered Peter her cookie, and I'm like, why would you get in business with a person who's spreading lies, and you're gonna continue to work with them? Maybe make the situation more uncomfortable and for more speculation. I don't get why Mia wants to stand on this issue so hard. Like, I want Mia to, focus on, her life, her situation, her family, and we really get to know her, We do get to see her address Mia, and pretty much. Now, when it came to addressing the Mia situation and the glass throwing at Wendy, I was kind of let down with Mia, because I felt like Mia should have taken accountability and ownership to not only, show that she has some sense of understanding towards Wendy, but to also move forward from the situation and end it, to close that chapter. I felt like with Mia not taking ownership and just now throwing additional lies on lies, I felt like you open up the situation to be even worse. And it was kind of unfortunate for me too, because I kind of liked the friendship that Mia and Wendy was starting to formulate, even though with Mia, it's a questionable person to be friendship with her because of how she treated Jacqueline. But I wanted her to, move forward and get past this issue so that it doesn't hold the group back. And also we address things with Wendy to make her feel right about the situation. So it was sad and unfortunate. And when we look at it, the girls didn't really defend Wendy as they should have. When you look at Robin, Robin, she was kind of wish-washy in defending Wendy. Her advice was that either you fight her or you shut up and not fight her. But never have Robin addressed Mia to say what you did was wrong. If anything, you kind of empowered Mia in what she was doing to make it okay. Now, when it came to Ashley, they looked at Ashley as being a hypocrite towards how she treated Wendy's situation and Monique's situation. Ashley, she feels as though she's been the most supportive out of all the girls in the group. Like, she was the one who stayed back in the Miami trip to talk to Wendy, to include her and bring her back into the group, because she understood what Mia did was wrong. The violence was wrong. But, when it comes to Ashley, sometimes she doesn't show consistency. So that's why it makes her look like a hypocrite. And that's why the girls view her not truly being there for Wendy. But I could kind of see how Ashley is there for, it's surprisingly, when Ashley could stand on her foot and say, no, this was wrong, then come on, guys, this must be really, really wrong. Now, when it came to Giselle does not like Wendy. Giselle makes it very clear she does not like Wendy. Giselle, she doesn't care what happened to Wendy. Mia could have hit Wendy's kids. Mia could have done whatever to Wendy and it not be wrong. She will have Mia's back or justify Mia's actions just because she doesn't like Wendy. And it goes to show her morals. Like, she doesn't stand for what is right. She only stands for what is right now. So I was disappointed with Giselle. Giselle, you're turning into the villain of the season, of the franchise for this season. Now, when Candiace, vocalized her viewpoint for the situation, it brought open the situation that happened with Monique and compared to what happened to Wendy. Wendy got very emotional. You can see the pain of reliving the situation, and for the girls to feel like Wendy is responsible for escalating the situation when they did not have that energy for Monique, And so Wendy was so much in pain, especially for these girls to not have her back or give her support, that, it is unfortunate to see that, because Wendy, no one wants to be outcasted from the group. And to see how Giselle treats the situation is so messed up. So messed up and unfortunate. And I do think that, Wendy, she has been able to control herself, because Wendy could have fought Mia. She says she held back from fighting Mia because she could have dragged her, not because she was afraid to. She was only because she wanted to respect the woman that she is, And that takes much strength to do. So we then get a little preview of Jacqueline coming up in the future scenes. But first, we have to address the colorism. We have a scene on colorism. And most people, from the feedback I've been seeing online, is that they didn't like the segment so much. They felt like it was too quick, it was glazed over, and it wasn't enough. So I wasn't too optimistic in seeing this, because I was kind of let down to hear how others felt about this scene. But when I watched this scene myself, Andy did the right thing in saying that, he cannot speak on colorism. There's so much implication for him as a white male addressing colorism, especially to this group of women of color, And I appreciated that because, we've all been saying, why is Andy moderating this type of topic? Or who should really spearhead this topic? And he makes it clear is that, how him and the producers wanted to move forward. They considered what the girls wanted and tried to plan accordingly how to address colorism in this group, since colorism was an issue in this franchise in this season. And so they did ask the girls how they wanted to discuss this and that if they should include a moderator. I was kind of shocked that they didn't want to have a moderator. I think a moderator would have been great in helping the girls kind of go through their scenarios and come from a non-biased position to ask questions on what they really thought about this, or what they thought, what happened in that scenario. And they said Candiace wanted a moderator, but the other girls didn't really want it. They wanted to handle the conversation themselves. And I thought that was a missed opportunity because, colorism is one thing. And I'm surprised they even addressed this because we've seen previously in the past where in The Real Housewives of New York, they completely avoided having to have a reunion to address the racial issues, the racial tension that Ramona was giving off to Ebony. And I felt like, they never really addressed that. We never had a sit down. There wasn't really a conversation. But how could you? Because it could be quite tiring for Ebony, for her to speak on what was done wrong to her, or scenarios where she felt uncomfortable, to these women who don't feel the need to even understand. So I felt like when it came to Potomac, I thought we can, set the tone, set the standard that we address racial issues. Now, when it comes to colorism, it was fantastic that Candiace started us off with providing the definition of colorism, and not only give us the definition of it, asked if the women agreed with the definition. Because if there's any conflict, first we have to be on the same page to even address the situation. So we wanted to be she wanted to be in agreement with everyone on by to understand what colorism is. I appreciated Andy sitting there and listening and not so much commenting, because it creates an implication. Because if he's commenting, it can be him critiquing. If he's commenting, he could be asking a question. But when it comes to asking these questions, it could be quite tiring as a person of color, having to explain what a person did was wrong. It feels like it's another trauma. It's like you're on the stand to kind of defend why you feel the way you're feeling and how this is because of racial microaggressions. And Candiace really was the one who was in control of it, and it was kind of sad and unfortunate too, because I felt like if they had a moderator, we could really dive in and get into it. The stuff I was hearing online is that pretty much they wanted to move on to the next topic, but it didn't seem that way. It just seemed as though they didn't know how far to take it. They didn't really have pretty much a plan, like a plan of action of how we're gonna address it. It was kind of like it happened in that moment where they flowed in discussion of it, but they didn't know what to add and what to move forward and address. So most of the women, it seemed as though they were just there to listen and hear Candiace talk about colorism, but they didn't come like prepared per se to say, oh, let's address this, or why this is wrong, why this is not right, this is the situation. And it was interesting for Candiace to bring up, okay, this is an issue, this is an example of colorism. When Candiace gets upset, cries, yells, and screams, it's perceived differently when Robin cries, yells, and screams. And it can be under the notion that, she's of a lighter skin complexion. Therefore, she's not perceived as a threat, as an aggressor, as a bully. Whereas Candiace is perceived as the villain when she's exuding the same kind of traits. And, this was not the moment for Robin to be so defensive about the situation. Rather, she should listen to what Candiace's perspective is about this scenario. Robin couldn't take the moment to take herself out of the equation and view it through Candiace's lens. And I felt like that was a missed opportunity of Robin. And after that, Robin was quiet because she was not contributing much to this dialogue. What I also didn't like is how Giselle, she challenged, this is the issue. She challenged Candiace to, why do you feel like in this situation that it's about race, the color of your skin? And it's like a situation where you're going through that trauma again, where if someone inflicted a harm onto you, you have to then explain and justify and convey your message to hopefully be received by that person. And that is traumatic. That is traumatic and also a bit degrading, because I have to prove with 100% certainty that you can maybe take what I have to say with some sort of weight. And that was a missed opportunity for Giselle. But I'm very happy that Karen, she clarified the situation. Karen was the one to say, listen, she understands that it is her privilege as a light-skinned woman, as opposed to what privileges that Candiace have. Like, you have to be able to receive and understand her treatment. You have to acknowledge it, you know? And the fact that Giselle didn't want to acknowledge it, the fact that Robin didn't want to acknowledge it, thank you, Karen, for speaking up. Like, and it's sad too, because Karen, a light-skinned woman, had to speak up for Candiace, a dark-skinned woman. Like, come on. What Candiace said is the same thing what Karen said. It's just, you have to understand the undertones of the situation. And I was shocked. I think Ashley was very emotional about this. And you could see the tears in the other woman's eyes. I guess this is why it wasn't a much longer segment as it should have been, because it's a very emotional issue. And it was nice and beautiful to see Ashley acknowledge that she has privilege. And that resonated to Candiace and Wendy, because they are dark-skinned women, and it was emotional for them to feel heard and it feel like the message was being received. Mia, she was a bit understanding too of the situation, because she has a daughter who is dark-skinned, darker than her. So she doesn't want her daughter, she was seeing her daughter in Wendy and Candiace, for her daughter not to feel less than her mother, because her mother is lighter. And you can see all the girls getting emotional about it. And, you know, I received this message that they had. Could it have been longer? Yes, of course. And I felt like a moderator would have been a great moment to have for this conversation, because it could have left and made open more clarity for the girls to receive and understand the situation. And it would have been a standard for other franchises where, you know, it's not an all-black cast and it's you're the only black person there. Like, for example, Beverly Hills. Giselle's tired. I'm pretty sure Giselle's tired over there. Ebony was definitely tired dealing with Ramona. I would be tired with dealing with Ramona. You know, I felt like that was a missed opportunity, but I did see where the women were coming from, saying that they wanted to have control of the conversation, but I don't think this conversation is able to be controlled with just them. I felt like you need an outsider speaking on colorism and asking the questions to kind of drive the conversation, because it was only until Karen asked the question as to, can you have to be able to see and put yourself out from being yourself and understanding others of darker skin complexion, why it is the way it is, and why there's an undertone of racial tension amongst our group of, in our community. You know, you have to think about it. You have to question that. You can't be so, you know, strong to understand, oh, I don't feel any discrimination towards you because you're a darker skin complexion. You have to see and question why the person feels the way that they do. So I felt like, you know, I'm happy they even discussed it. I thought it was going to be 2 seconds and it's over with, but I felt like, you know, it could have been longer. I would love it to be longer. And maybe some of the women, they don't feel comfortable in talking about these issues, because first and foremost, to talk about racial issues, you have to be comfortable in who you are and what you are to this world. Me as a black woman, I'm comfortable in speaking about racial issues because I have accepted that I am black. And, you know, some people haven't accepted who they are and how they present to the world. So I feel like it would be a comfortable situation in talking to white people and explaining racial issues and why a situation can appear and look like it's a racial issue, as opposed to others are still finding comforts in their, how they present and how they look to the world, because many of those feel like they don't see color. But you that's nonsense. You have to see color. First of all, you see I'm dark, you see what you look like, and you have to understand in the real world how that can play a role in many deciding factors, in many scenarios that we go through day to day. So it could be that the women were not comfortable yet, or not okay with discussing that. In previous seasons, it has been an issue where Robin and Giselle, they were questioned whether they were dark enough by Katie, because they are light skinned. So I can see, based on how defensive they are, it is a soft spot. It's not an easy topic to talk about, but I feel like when we have these conversations, we become more comfortable. And it leaves open for understanding. We then get a scene with Jacqueline. Finally, she comes into the scene. And this is actually Jacqueline's first time seeing Mia after filming this show. And that's unfortunate, because they were sisters, they were, family for a long time. And, Mia, she felt like they both could have done better. So she holds accountable Jacqueline as well. But I can't really think of when Jacqueline didn't have Mia's back. I feel like Jacqueline was very supportive over Mia. And I think Jacqueline had enough. And then that's what triggered her to really defend it for herself. And because she wants to defend herself, it sends a response to Mia feeling the need that she needs to go really low. And her going low is by spewing out what Jacqueline calls untruths. So Mia, she tries to justify how she was treating Jacqueline by saying that she was going through a lot personally. So to have to deal with Jacqueline on top of it, it was too much for her. And, unfortunately, Jacqueline took the heat of that. This also then goes down the road where they're going for tick and tack. Pretty much, Jacqueline's here to talk about Mia's businesses, and then Mia's here to talk about her having her home in foreclosure, her not being a good mom, her going through this scenario, sleeping with this married men and stuff like that. So it's just it's too much tick for tack, and I don't really want this as a segment. I feel like Jacqueline and Mia need to address these issues by themselves, because obviously the cameras does not help them at all. If anything, they want to put on a show and drag each other in a bloodbath, and it's so cringy to watch. I do not want to see that. I don't want to give that much weight. We then get a preview of Reunion Part 3, and finally we're gonna see Chris. I'm hoping to see how Chris handles the situation and justice, because Chris deserves his time to be platformed to talk about his side of the story and what this has meant to him. And I wonder to see how Giselle's going to handle this, because he looks so upset. And, for him to say he lose clients, lose money, and he has to answer to his family, that's a lot. But what I was really here for is Karen addressing the receipts she had on Juan. And apparently she has some photos, some tea. So I'm like, yes, finally. And, we do get the interview with Robin and Andy talking about the allegations of him cheating, and she has to come to address that. We also get Charisse, but what's Charisse gonna contribute really? Okay, let's move on. So I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. This has been such a wild reunion for sure. All the topics we talk about, what do I see in the future? I feel like they're all coming back for next season, maybe up to the debate with Robin up in the air. But for the most, I do think these girls will come back. They did a really good season. I felt like I would rate this an 8.1. I felt like I was on edge for the whole episode. It's so much going on, so much feedback from each other. Have we reconciled anything? I don't know. We'll wait to see on the final episode of the reunion if they resolve anything, if they can all walk out and give each other hugs. But that's yet to be seen. I think that, Candiace had enough with these girls. I hope Candiace learned that these girls are not her friends, and that, Ashley turns a new leaf and tries to, make amends with Candiace, make amends with Wendy, And for as far as Giselle, I feel like she has cemented her position as a villain. She's the villain of Real Housewives of Potomac. So I felt like this was the nail to the coffin of her being the villain. For sure, for sure. For Wendy, I would say I just hope for a better season for her next year. I want her to have a fun season. I want to hear something fun going on with her. I'm tired of this whole gang up on Wendy. And, I look forward to Karen being La Dame, So there's no, more I can ask from Karen. For Mia, I just hope Mia to be more real. I'm tired of her getting into these beefs. I just want her to resolve the issues that she has in her life and be able to move forward. Now with Robin, I just want her to be real with herself, real to her situation. I feel like we could all root for Robin if she was true and real about her situation with Juan. If they have an open situation, it's open situation. But don't have yourself look crazy, your family look crazy, by saying stuff that are not true or trying to maintain an image that's not true. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. Next week, look forward to another recap of the finale of the reunion. So if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. If you do, let me know in the comments below. Take care and have a good night. Bye.